In this video, we'll learn how to use the new root parameter bindings to component inputs in Angular 16, and we'll go from this piece of code to this piece of code, reducing a lot of boilerplate in our Angular projects. Great, so let's get started. Hey everyone, I'm Zoeb Khan and I'm a senior front-end engineer. In this channel, I build cool stuff with Angular and hopefully inspire you to do the same as well. Now, Angular 16 introduced a great little DX improvement where you can simply use component inputs to access the value of the root parameters linked to that component. So let's take the example of a videos app and see a bit of code to get familiar with it. So for example, we have a videos app where we have a videos list, and then we have a video view component which shows a specific video. So how would we do that in a typical application? So we'll have a roots file, and then we would have a specific root which would have a video slash an ID. Now this ID with a semicolon is basically the parameter that we'll pass in to the component itself. So we'll need to have that path, and then we'll need to have the component where we need the ID, which in our case would be the video view component. So how would we do this before Angular 16 was introduced? Now the typical way to do that would be to inject the activated root service, which is provided by Angular to access everything related to the roots. So we're gonna initialize an ng on init, and then we will have to subscribe to the parameters or the pull for the activated root, and we need to get the ID from the params. And then we can use this ID to fetch the specific video and show it to our users. And how would we do this with this new change in Angular 16? Simple, we just have an input decorator, and that is all we need. So let's look at a real example app next and see how we can refactor it to use the new input and how much it helps us. So this is a real life example now, and I'll use the example of a recent app that I built with the YouTube API and my own YouTube videos. It's a simple app, but both of its roots have root parameters. Now this is the dashboard one, which actually has two parameters. One is the tag and one is the sort parameter. And then when we click on a video, we have a detailed video component or the video view component, which actually has the ID root parameter. So let's first see how it is implemented currently and how are we getting the root parameters here. So if we go in the videos dashboard component, we can actually see that we have an activated root which has been injected here service, and then we subscribe to the parameters and we get the tag and the sort from the parameters. We check whether it's valid and we set it to the signals so that we can then display our videos list according to it. And the similar is with the video view component. Here as well, you can see that we have the activated root here, and we need to subscribe to the root parameters in ng on init, and we need to get the ID from the parameters, check if it's valid, and then set it to the signal itself. Great. So let's see how to make this simpler now. So the first step to enable it is to have Angular 16 first of all. So make sure that your app is updated to Angular 16. And then we need to go into our app.config here, and we need to define another function which is called with component input binding. And with this one small change, your root parameters now are going to be bound to the input of that component itself. Great. So if we go back to our video view component, for example, let's try to refactor it first. What are we going to do? We are going to remove the root, activated root here. The ng on it here, we don't need it. And we can also actually remove the signal because we don't actually need it. But let's first add the input simply, and we're going to use the ID here. Let's remove the type issue here, and let's make this string, and let's also add a definite assignment operator to it. And then since our root parameter is coming from this ID itself, we can directly use this instead of the signal itself. Great. Simple and easy, we don't need the signal anymore. And let's save and test this out to see whether it works the same. And now when we click on one, and you can see that we have the same behavior as before. Great, with much simpler code. Okay, now let's go to the videos dashboard. Now the videos dashboard has two root parameters as I told you before. And if we go in our roots file, you can see that there's a tag with the name of tag, and there's a sort with the name of sort. So you might be wondering whether this input component binding change handles multiple root parameters as well, and the answer is yes, very easily. So it's going to map to two separate inputs in your videos dashboard here. So let's see how this works. We can simply remove the activated root, and then we can create two inputs. One would be tag because it's the same name, And by the way, you can also specify a different name if you would like to do that. So you can say that you can do tag param like this, and this has to be the same. This should match the root parameter given in the roots file, but this does not need to match, and you can actually change the names later on. Great. So, but we're going to revert back to others because we don't need to actually change the names here. So this is our input tag, and then the other input is sort. And now the other thing is that we need to also set our signals, and it's not a simple input here. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this ng on init and get this out of the way. And instead of this tag, what we're going to do is we are going to use a setter here. We're going to give the name of tag. We're going to give the value of this. And then we're going to define a setter, which is simply going to set the value of the signal. Great. And we're going to do the same with this. We're just going to change it to sort. This is going to do current sort. Great. And let's test out if our input bindings are working. And when we see here, we can see that yes, our dashboard is working as before. Great. So you can see how simpler this is conceptually. And if you have a lot of components with component root bindings, you are going to immediately see the difference in your code, and it's going to make it much simpler. Now, this is just a basic overview of it. If you want more detail about this feature, I have a very nice article by Inia Jalohari, who is a Google developer expert and an Angular enthusiast, very active on Twitter especially. And he has written a very detailed article on this. And turns out that this feature is not really restricted to using the root parameters only. You can actually use it for other sorts of data as well. So you can use it for query parameters as well. You can use it for the data that is passed to the roots as well. And you can use it for even the resolved data, which a lot of apps use to show the root only when the data has resolved for that specific root. So if you're using any of these in your projects, consider moving to this after updating to Angular 16. Great. So I hope you like this small overview of this great little new DX feature in Angular 16. And as before, if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, please subscribe so that I can keep bringing you more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.